Well, it's early on a Tuesday morning, and I'm driving down to Gullwing in Queens, New York again. It seems like I do this, probably do this trip every 3 months, once every 3 months. I've talked about it before, but Gullwing Motorcars down in Queens is this dealership that sells mainly classic or collectible cars, and they sell a bunch of stuff that's right on the bubble. Like, in other words, it's not like where you go to a dealer and you see these beautiful cars that are all shiny and presented on a plinth, and the classic car dealer is all polished and talks about how he loves the cars and it's this and it's great, and you develop a relationship with the broker. That is not what Gullwing Motors is about. Gullwing Motors is almost like a wholesaler, in the sense of, like, you go out to Gullwing and there are just hundreds of cars in various states of repair and condition. Some of them are running and driving, and some of them are just a wreck, totally rusted, and just, who would buy this stuff? But at the same time, it gives the impression that there's something for everyone, and at all different price ranges. What I'm going down today to Gullwing for is to go and inspect the GTE, a 250 GTE. Now, this is right in my wheelhouse. This is a early 60s V12 vintage Ferrari. I own a 330 America, so it's very similar to my car, but it's represented as a survivor car or unrestored original car, original black. So I was contacted by somebody and said, "Hey, I'm looking at this car. Would you be interested in inspecting it for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. It's a Gullwing. It's going to take a couple hours to drive down, a couple hours to drive back. But that's usually what I do, charge by the hour, close down my shop. Usually takes about 3 to 4 hours to inspect the car. If it's running and driving, we'll take it out for a test drive. I'll do a compression check, and I'll go with the overall condition of the car. I will research a little bit on the history of it, but generally I like to go into this a little cold. In other words, no preconceived ideas. Take it at face value, see what the car looks like, what condition, see the signs of whether or not it was painted or whether or not it was damaged, and just try to look at it without like a subjective eye, just an objective eye of, let's just see if this car is as it's being presented, and then give my report and either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let the owner or the buyer deal with the pricing. I'll advise them a little bit and try to give them comps about other cars, but usually I try to leave that to the buyer. But what's really good about this particular inspection is that the buyer is going to be meeting me to do it. That's the best way for me to do an inspection on a car, because owning a car and buying a car is sometimes, as objective as my job is to be, buying it is very subjective because it's emotional. And I think sometimes that's why the car world, and especially the collector car world, can be troublesome, because dealers and brokers prey on that subjectivity of emotions. Because if they get you to fall in love with a car before you even look closer, they got the car sold. So, like, my feeling is, my job is to be as objective and as much of a naysayer as possible to kind of temper the emotional attraction that an owner might have to a particular car. These guys, they wait their whole lives to buy a particular car. They've always wanted it. They're ready to buy it. They sign me up. How much do I write? But my job is to, slow down. Let's take a look at this car. There's other cars that are better. There are other cars that are, this and that, or cheaper, or maybe you should pay more for a better car. Those kind of things are things that are my job for me to kind of remind these guys. So where they come in, they need to just kind of be held back by me. But at the same time, I do want their emotions to kind of have them, check them when they come and see the car, because a lot of times, like, if you really like the car and it's a decent car, you won't have any regrets because you like the car. I feel sometimes I do like having an owner with me, because number one, I can explain to them all the things that why they shouldn't buy this car, and they can tell me all the reason why they want to buy the car. And somewhere in there in that conversation, can we make a better decision as to, just don't take my word for it. I mean, I can tell you this car stinks and all this other stuff, or, you know, I can tell you, you know, from an objective point of view, the paint on this car is not really good. And a buyer will look at the paint and says, well, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. Another buyer, I could say the paint on this car looks decent, it's not great, and the owner or the buyer will just say, oh no, I couldn't live with paint that looks like that. I would be embarrassed I'd be repainting it. Well, then that's a discussion that is subjective. So don't take my word when I say, you know, I don't really like the paint, because to someone else they might say, I love the paint, that looks, you know, that's kind of like the old leather jacket look, I'm okay with that. Another buyer might look at it and says, no, that's too worn out for me. So when I inspect a car, if I could do it with the potential buyer, we can have that conversation, and I can at least say, this paint, though rough, will not peel off in flakes. And he could say, okay, I can deal with that. Or I could look at it and says, this paint looks rough, but it's going to look worse because I know the signs in which the paint is actually going to just crumble in a couple years. Drive this in the rain a few times, this is going to get worse. And then they could say, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't think about buying this car. So that's what's great about this one, is that I get to do it with the potential buyer when we go down to Gullwing. So let's just see what happens when we head down there and see what we find. So I'll check in with you when I get in. On this one, you know, obviously the plate number there is 3585. So then there's a stamp. You could just see it. See how it says 250 GTE, and that should say 3585 right there faintly. See how it's stamped there?
I mean, I don't know that I can make that out.
But that's what it is. I mean, if we sanded it down, you would see it. But it reads 3585. Okay? And then the other one on the engine is way down here.
Oh,
you see that?
Yeah,
3585 right there. So that's, let's see if I just get it on camera, but
it's
that's
a lot easier to find than on a domestic.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But anyway. And so those are what you're looking for. There are a lot of other stamps on the car, but the ones that they say, you know, matching number, so to speak, is that's what they're looking for. And then the other subtlety to all that is that sometimes on restamps, like they'll restamp the engine, so you want to look at the font. Like, does the font look the same way? And I'm looking at that, and that 5 is very specific, and the 3 is very specific. So that's what we're looking for. I'm just going to record this while I'm looking at it.
Sure.
It's kind of like a running dialogue. First off, grease everywhere. So you have a steering box leak, and it's basically coated the whole suspension here. And this is all, it's almost like road tar covering everything. It also, it looks like a lot of grease, like
white mold too, growing like on the grease.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just from storage. But like somebody's put this gold. Somebody greased everything up and put grease in everything. So there's a lot of like this gold grease squirting out everything.
I don't suppose someone can jack on this base for the shock.
It's not good to do that. No. Because there's a C-clip and a collar, so you don't want to untension that.
What would you tie down to here if someone was going to trailer it?
You kind of wrap a soft canvas thing around those.
Yeah, for the front.
I also have these toe rings that I've made that go into here, and there's actually a toe ring because there's no real good place to hook to, unless the toe guy has a strap, soft strap.
I mean, I always have soft straps, but it's great when there's a an eye bolter.
Yeah, sure.
Just clip onto.
This is good. I mean, like these pieces are still here. These scutcheons with the rubber ring around that's kind of nice. I mean, it's just original. I mean, not original, but it's still there. All this stuff is kind of not missing, like the hardware. But very typical, like oil leaks and grease and stuff. Pretty wet here at the sump. A lot of leaks here. You got it looks like it's just leaking everywhere. It's got valve cover leaks, sump leak, and then the oil pan, the belly pan, which is rare that it's here, but it's here. So that can hide all the transmission leaks that are down there. They're kind of like coated and stuff without pulling that whole thing down. The exhaust is not original. The exhaust looks like a bunch of welded, cobbled together glass packs. So that's going back here. The floor pans, a lot of undercoating, so I don't know what condition.
I don't know what we're looking at.
Yeah, we don't know what. There is a couple. You see these pop rivets? So those pop rivets is somebody had put like that. That finish looks like original floor pan undercoating. This looks like there was a patch here that was pop riveted in place.
Does anybody ever jack on those, or it's not safe?
No, you can't. There's nothing there.
There's nothing.
And these
there.
are frame on. There's no. That's just floor pans. So the main chassis member is like the outrigger is here.
Sure.
Which is good because it looks solid. I don't see. You know, the outrigger looks pretty good.
You know what I'm saying though, like on your Mustang you could, if you had to jack on the floor, you wouldn't.
Yeah, well, because it's a unit body, but these are frames, so.
What about this piece here?
Yeah, but that's an outrigger, but not really strong.
Right, meaning
because they rust. You know, the main thing for me is like reason I won't even use the jack
on a
plugs.
brand new car, maybe you.
I won't even use because these are jack plugs. This is where you're supposed to jack the car up to. But look at the way that jack plug, and this is original. Look at the way it's welded to the frame, to the outrigger.
Yeah, there's not much.
There's nothing there. So like to me, like that is good and bad in the sense of like that's original. But then I know they did rocker work. Okay, but the thing is, I don't tell people to use these jack plugs either because there's not a lot of structure. You know, just use the frame member like we're using here.
That front location definitely a little more sketchy. Like you said, just like you said, because of the mud flap. Ironically, I mean, that's hilarious.
A lot of leaks back here too. Rear differential is leaking. It leaks often from these flanges because there's no gasket at the flange. So it just, as it gets older, it just tends to leak at the flange because you know, you'd have to take the axle tubes out to seal it. So a lot of people just don't do it because it just leaks. The rear shocks have been changed. So somebody has put aftermarket shocks because this is a Series 2 car. So the Series 2 car does not have these coilovers, but these aren't even the real coilovers. These are like some aftermarket coilover with a, look at this, with a muffler clamp.
You mean this?
No, over here, come on the other side of the axle.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's a muffler clamp around the bottom of the shock. Not sure what that's about, but and there's one up top too. Look at that. So that's kind of
I see it.
Crazy. But these cars are not supposed to have coilovers. They're supposed to just have springs, and I think what happens is these springs get worn and the rear end sags. So then they put the coilover to help it. And then I don't know what that is. There's a big plate looking up, something. Oh, you know, that's probably a speaker. That's a speaker cover for the bottom of the thing. It's probably another one up that way. Oh no, that's the defroster. Okay, but I think they have a plate here for the bottom of the. Let's see if I can show you. That right there, that's the bottom of the package tray inside the car. Yeah, so these exhaust tips are not original. These are they're not the ANSA, you know, whatever, the dual. These are just pipes.
Yeah.
So the whole exhaust system is not a Ferrari exhaust system. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure it still looks 90% close.
No.
No, not even?
No. Because even this Y pipe is cobbled. Look how many sections are on this Y pipe.
Yeah.
So this isn't even original. Like from the headers, and then there's patches on the header. So the headers are kind of, see that? That's all that JB weld.
Yep, I sure do.
So that's all JB welded or whatever, or a high temp epoxy. to patch the header. So this is wrong, and this is a Y pipe that's cobbled together, and then the whole exhaust system is not correct.
Would it have had a Y pipe?
Yeah, no, it's similar in shape.
Yeah, similar, yeah.
But not with all these little sections.
Yeah. It'd be cool if it was like we thought the previous guy did the work himself. Like, oh wow, impressive. He can make exhaust.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sure
this is just cobbled together section.
Definitely.
All right. And you know, it's got a lot of undercoating, so it's hard to tell, but it doesn't show signs. Like the outriggers don't look rusty. We saw pictures of the rockers being cut out and welded, so I think this rocker is probably new. So structurally wise, if there's one little patch, it's this one, but I don't think it's a rusty car. Like in the sense of like, it's rotted. You know, the frame looks good. The floors might be okay, but the rockers, I know at least somebody's done something to them in the past. All right. And the brakes, I mean, brakes look like they've been done, I don't know how long. I mean, when we say it looks like done recently, it could be in the last 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
But they're not like the same age as everything else.
It's probably the pictures.
Yeah, you see how fresh they are compared to the rest of the suspension.
Oh my God, unbelievably.
Yeah. All right. So I see enough. Let's put it down on the ground, and maybe we'll run a compression check.
I could have sworn that when I saw pictures originally, they had a chrome air cleaner top. We come here and it's black, and it looks correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be painted regular black, not wrinkle black.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what's interesting in this car is that we've got a vacuum canister here, which I'm not sure where the gauge. So it comes off the engine. Don't know why. I mean, when I drove it, it looks like it was getting vacuum, but whoever installed this, just kind of like a crusty engine with a lot of stuff. I mean, the original hood pad looks like, but all the regular stuff looks like it's here. The coils are right, the wiring is right, the original yellow fuel lines right, the original distributor cap, the wires are wrong, this little spreader is wrong, but just small little cosmetic things. You see, like they did some little, you know, extra pieces here for this vacuum thing. The exhaust shields are there, steering box is there, all this stuff is here, the regulator is here, the radiator is correct, has the right core. This is wrong. This whatever this
What's that little T?
Yeah, well no, it's this standpipe on the
gotcha.
is
coming off the radiator.
Yeah, it's something. So in other words, the back part of the standpipe looks correct in plumbing, but then they welded this plate. I don't know if it's to make it easier to disconnect it from this hose or whatever. I don't know. There's something.
You mean this junction?
Yeah.
Right
So
there?
this plate has been welded to the original pipe because there's a weld right here.
Right.
So somebody modified the original.
Meaning that square junction just wouldn't have been there.
No, wouldn't have been there. So somebody modified that. Also, alternator is not original. It's got this funky bent bracket to kind of make it work.
Should it be an alternator or a generator?
On this car, it would have been a generator. Later Series 3s would have ended up with alternators, but there was some changes they started doing. So that's why there's a voltage. It looks like there's a forward voltage regulator here. So this could be a
right on.
Yeah, it could be a Ford.
Familiar.
Could be a Ford alternator. The horns are correct. Horn compressor is there. That's good. Battery hold down is incorrect, but it's got some of the pieces there. Lots of ground cables. The fuse panel is correct, or the fuse cover is correct. All this stuff looks, you know, generally they're just missing little details and just generally through the years painted over. The washer bottle is correct. This is pretty expensive, these things now, to find the original washer bag. The washer bag, rather.
And is it original?
Yeah, it's original. So that's pretty rare, or not rare, but hard to find if you don't have it. You know, prop rod's correct. All this stuff is correct. Just got black paint on it instead. All right, and then interior-wise is quite a bit of interesting stuff. So again, just talking out loud. So we have. Oh, by the way, the windshield. All the windshields have this sealant around it because it looks like it's the original gasket. So somebody put like a bathtub caulk.
Yep.
All the way around to try to preserve the original. That's just something I noticed. Obviously incorrect bullet mirrors from like a '78 Trans Am, but that's what that is. The speaker is wrong. Somebody's cut up a hole in the original panel and then put some mirror adjuster here for those Trans Am mirrors. Other than that, this is kind of the original leather, which I think it's Zucca. I think it's that pumpkin color as opposed to red, so it's got that orangish red, which is kind of neat.
Or as opposed to natural, which is
as opposed to natural. Yeah, I don't think it's called natural. Natural would have been a lot lighter. This, I think, is that. I think this is what we would call Zucca.
But it looks too consistent to have been dyed.
No, I don't think it's been dyed. Yeah? I mean, if it has been, at least but it looks like the original color. Like it looks pretty close. Dash has a whole bunch of these little labels on everything. So.
They wouldn't have been there?
No.
Oh, that's so funny. Like a label maker. Like
well, because the L is for lights, P is for paddle, F is for fog. There's no reason to have this stuff. I don't know why somebody put more labels. They're already labeled, and then you're missing 3 of them. So you're missing. They switched these to flip switches. They should be also the same push-pull.
Oh, okay.
As these guys. So you got 3.
They turned them into toggles. Is that what they?
Yeah, they turned them into toggles.
Okay.
So somebody either lost them or broke them or whatever. If you wanted to go back, you need to find those switches. To replace them with.
Probably Bakelite.
Well, they're just these Ferrari switches, and their knobs and stuff are around. And then the ashtray is missing, and they put this plate in here to show the shift pattern.
That would have been an ashtray.
Yeah, that would have been an
And
ashtray.
it would not have shown the shift pattern.
No. And then this, I didn't get a chance to get it up to speed to drive it with overdrive, but that's the overdrive switch. These are the headlight switches. And then there should be another ashtray stand here. Yep, there's your ashtray. So this one's here at least. Okay. You would have had a second one in the front. All right. What else? The carpets, I think the carpets have been replaced. They don't look like, they're not Wilton carpets. So, the leather interior on this looks original.
The carpets just don't look like they have 100,000 miles of wear.
No, and they're not wool. Those, I think these are polyester or whatever, nylon carpets. So somebody's replaced the carpets. Probably when they did the rockers, when they had all this car painted.
Yeah, why not?
They probably did that. But generally the back, all the headliner, side pieces, all this stuff looks like the original interior stuff. The one thing that we noticed that was different is this whole back panel here. I don't know if the light, yeah, there you can see it. So the defroster intake is correct. That you could, okay, now you can see with the flashlight, the perforations are still there. So what they did was they put a speaker over there and then put a panel to make it match. I think what happened was this back panel got so shrunken that they added this piece of leather and then cut out the center because it was potato chipping.
Meaning it would not have been two-tone.
No, it would have been one whole piece of leather, but what ended up happening probably is that the rear panel started to shrink and potato chip. So in order to save some of the leather, they just cut the edges and then added this strip of black leather to extend it so it would flatten it out. Because what ends up happening often...
Meaning the pumpkin back here is probably original,
yes,
not the black.
Yes, and it was a full piece, but when it shrinks, it turns the rear panel into a big potato chip. So then what they did was they just cut the center that was still good and not shrunken, and then they just stretched it out with the black leather, and that's why you have this two-tone black leather thing.
Kind of appreciate that, like, track fix, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, or somebody, whatever to do it. I mean, it's, yeah. Okay, so that's that. That's what I see. You know, rear view mirror is correct. The visors are correct. You know, so those are all original details that are still here. They added seat belts, so there's like these retractors. But that's and I guess it was a member of the Ferrari GTE register.
You're a little more flexible than me. You want to put your hand back there and see
sure.
if you can push that in, see if that window...
Yep, it should. It over centers like that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's good ventilation. And these little pieces are here, like this little chrome piece is here, so those are nice to have, not missing when they disassemble the car. Door closes pretty well. And the paint generally is okay. I mean, it's been redone. We kind of suspect that it's been repainted maybe, you know, many years, decades ago, but it's holding up fairly well. The grill badge, I think, has changed because I think these cars were supposed to have flat horses. So somebody's chained that to a modern, a more three-dimensional horse. And the chrome's just chrome. It's just a little worn. Not bad, but just a little worn. It's afternoon, and I'm heading home after being down at Gullwing. Went down to look at that GTE, and let me tell you what I found. So it was a black car. The paint was actually in better shape than I thought. The story was that it was painted many years ago, but luckily with the car there was a folder with a bunch of pictures, so I was able to inspect the pictures, and it showed a lot of the work was done where metal was cut out and it was cut open and repaired correctly. It looked like there was good metal work that was done. Rockers were cut open and repaired, and the car was stripped to bare metal and painted. So even though it was many years ago that the car was painted, I was glad to see that that it was done correctly. Now, there were certain areas, and now this could have been from 10-20 years ago when they painted it, but some of the rubber gaskets and chrome and stuff was just put back on the car, and it wasn't really fresh stuff there. But and the interior on the car was pretty original. I mean, it looked, what was neat about it is it was a black car with what I would call a Zucca or pumpkin interior. It wasn't red, it was more of a orangish red, and I thought it looked pretty good with the black paint. So the only bad thing about it is that when the customer and I went to take it out for a drive, it ran like junk. I mean, it just was like, it wouldn't idle right, it was idling high, it smoked, it would fall flat on its face when I released the clutch in first. I'd floor the car in first gear and it would barely make it down the block. Try to get it in second, and I basically turned around and just went back and says, guys, this car is not drivable. Like, I was able to drive it first, second, clutch take up, and got a little bit of temperature in the engine. Normally, I would just take the car out for a full road test. The plan is to take it up, to speed, to the highway, and check to make sure the overdrive works, make sure it was working in all gears, just generally make sure it's a driving, stop straight, shifts right, turns, no clunks, none of all that stuff, just as a test drive. And I couldn't even get it around the block, barely got it around the block. So my plan was to take it back to the shop and see if it was something just really simple, like maybe it was a throttle linkage that was disconnected, or something that just wasn't connected in, or maybe it was running on 6 cylinders, maybe one of the coil wires were off. So I quickly looked at the car and didn't find anything wrong. So at that point I was like, well, maybe we'll just try to make it around the block, because I wanted my customer to drive it a little bit, get him in the car, and the car stalled. I mean, it just stalled and then wouldn't restart. So we ended up letting it sit for a few minutes on the side of the road, and then just drove it back to the shop and said, well, you know what, we got temperature up on it, might as well just do a compression check. And found decent numbers. I mean, they were all from like 125, 130 all the way up to as much as 145, maybe even one of them had 150. So the engine wasn't in bad shape. Oil pressure was decent for the short drive that I took it and got the engine a little warmer. So it wasn't bad car. It wasn't a bad car, but it wasn't a great car. So we were hoping that it would be a car that we could just, get running and driving, and I still felt like that. I kind of looked at this car and said, you know what this car really needs? This car needs a full service. Like, in other words, needs a carburetor service, needs an ignition service where we should change the points, we regap everything, pull the plugs, put new plugs in, new spark plug wires, and then tune the carburetors, set the timing, and I bet you this car would run great. But the problem with that is that you still got all the oil leaks, you still have unknown suspension, which it could be, didn't get to drive it very far, so I didn't know if it was clunking or rattly, or the transmission seemed to shift okay. clutch take-up seemed okay, but again, not really having driven it very far, it's hard to know. So, where are we at? Well, I don't know if this buyer is ready to pull the trigger on something with so much work ahead of it. You know, I get emotionally involved sometimes in these cars. It's like, oh man, wouldn't it be great? We could just bring this one back to life, but not on somebody else's dime. I'm concerned that this guy spends, you know, 6 figures on this car, and then all of a sudden spends, you know, a lot more just getting it better and better, and may not be prepared to spend that kind of money. So I just warned him and said, look, you know, just be careful. I mean, if I felt like I could put 20 to 30 hours on this car and get it to the point where I could actually get it running and driving. That's what I would do as far as a tune-up, carb service, ignition service, set timing, and tune it and drive it and get everything working. I bet you it would make a world of difference on this car. But that's just the beginning, because once you own it, yeah, it could drive and, you know, you could use it and all this other stuff, but it's still got the oil leaks. It still could have a worn out suspension. I had 90,000 miles on the odometer, so who knows what else it could be. So I think it was a good visit. I really enjoyed doing it with the potential buyer, because he learned a lot about Ferraris just simply because I showed him, you know, all the things about the car. Got to drive it. He actually got to sit behind the wheel a little bit and drive it and get a feel for one. So it wasn't a complete loss of a day for him. I think that he learned a little bit about Ferraris. He got to drive a 250 GTE, those short and only probably first and second gear. But it's all about putting that experience in your head so that when he can go home, he can say, is that what I really want? Did I really like the look of that car? Do I want to buy this one, or do I want to start looking for better ones, or can I find one that's just a little bit different than this one? Yeah, so that was my trip down to Gullwing today. But you never know what you see, and hey, thanks for watching.